I will click on sign in with Google. And so we have authenticated user using Lucia and Google Auth. Hey, this is Ur, and it's been a while since I recorded my last video. In this video, we will learn how we can add social logins into our website. We will first add Google login, then we can implement more and more social medias. After watching this video, you will be able to implement your own social media login, whether it's Google sign-in or any other social media. Let's add a button first. I will go to sign in form, and I will be using the previous code that is from the previous video. And we have a PostgreSQL database here, and we are using DrizzleORM and ShadCN, Tailwind CSS, but we use them like in a basic level. So it won't be an issue if you don't use DrizzleORM or PostgreSQL or even TypeScript. So I will go to sign in page, and we have a sign in form here. And I will put a button above this form actually. So I will wrap this form with a fragment. We can also say fragment. It's same thing, and this comes from React package. Yeah, here we go. Anyway, then I will create a div and a button here. Variants, let's say outline. I will give full width, flex, center them vertically, and center the content horizontally. And here I will say sign in with Google. Perfect. And yeah, it is good. And one thing I'd like to add is giving full width to the button like this. It's nice. We can also have a separator here. What separator? It was coming from ShadCN, but I think we didn't add it to project, but we can make our own separator quickly. Maybe we can create a div and put a span and text and another span here. And I will give full width, flex, item center, justify center, and gap 2. And I will now give them to some styling. Okay, it's beautiful already. I will wrap this with span as well and give it to flex none, and it will look like this. Okay, it's enough for now. So let's write a function to this one on Google sign in, collect like this. And for now, let's log something. Perfect. I don't see anything because, okay, here we are. Google sign in collect. Nice, we can continue. So yeah, let's start writing some server actions for this function so that we can call it here. And actually, we will need to have a client ID and client server. So I will go to Google Cloud here to create a new web app there. And I can just click it to console, and we can create projects from there. I will click new project, and I will just need to enter some name. It's free. I have only one project remaining in my quota. So let's say Google Auth tutorial. Nice. And I will click create. So it's being generated. Then I will click select project. Then I can click on API and services. While in a Google Auth tutorial project, if you have multiple projects, you can just select the one you want to do the operations. I will click on API and services here. We will click on OAuth consent screen, choose external. That's fine. Give it a name, and it shows here. Let me show it to you. So yeah, the name will be displayed in here, and other informations as well. In this screen, so we will need to add our app name, support mail, Google Auth tutorial, let's say. And please fill those as well. Those are important. And I will lastly give my email again and save and continue. So we are in the second step, and it's important. We will add user info email and user info profile so that we can see users' email and as well as their first name, last name, and profile photos. So I will select these two and click update, and we can click save and continue. That's fine. And summary. Perfect. We have created a consent screen. That's fine. Then we will go to credentials. Then click on create credentials. Then we will create an OAuth client ID. Application type will be web application. we will give a name, and it doesn't matter, it won't be shown to the user. Let's give some name, tutorial, it doesn't matter. So these two fields is important. The first one, ask for authorized JavaScript origins, which will be http://localhost 3000 in our case. And the redirect URL is that once user accept the consent page, and Google will redirect user to that URL. That's why we will give a path to API and OAuth maybe and Google. You can define it as you want. It doesn't matter at this step. So that means actually we will have an API folder here and OAuth folder. Under that Google folder, and under that we will have a root.ts. We will have a root handler here. Anyway, that seems nice. I will click on create. OAuth client created. So I have a client ID and a client secret here. I will copy them and go to my env and Google client ID. And when you watch this video, those ID and secret key will be deleted. But you shouldn't ever show your IDs and secret keys to other people or commit them into your repository. Google client secret. That's good. Perfect. And now I can click on, I can also download it for safety. I will click on OK. That's all for the Google Cloud. We have created our project and we have created OAuth consent screen and client ID. Everything seems fine. So let's go back to our app. First thing we will do is go to library, and inside Lucia, I will create a new file called OAuth.ts. And what we can do is we can import Google from Arctic. So we will be using Arctic for handling OAuth operations such as generating state or redirecting user, etc. And you will be see this in a second. Let's import Google from Arctic, but we don't have this. Here we go. They say Arctic is an OAuth 2.0 library for JavaScript TypeScript that supports numerous of providers. It's lightweight, full-typed, and runtime agnostic. They have even an example. So I actually will copy this and paste it into my file here. Then we can install Arctic like this. Okay. Instead of GitHub, I will import Google provider. I will call this Google, and this constructor class will be Google, and we can see what it expects. So it expects 3 arguments, one client ID, client secret, and a redirect URI. Let's give client ID first, process env, Google client ID and client secret like this. And for the redirect URI, and for the redirect URI, we can actually use next public base as we define it here. And we can add API OAuth Google like this. So as you've seen that the Copilot here has recommended us to have a callback like this. And it's a good idea since it is a callback and we are doing some operations, but in our cases, we define it as Google. And yes, sometimes there could be some other files inside Google. So it may be a good idea to have a callback folder. And inside that callback folder, we can have a root.ts. But we have defined our URL in the Google Cloud. So let's not change it for now. Let's keep it like that. Type exclamation point. It seems nice. And this authorization URL, and get rid of this part. Google create authorization URL, and it expects 3 arguments, and it expects a state and a code verifier. So code verifier is also called PKCA, and the code verifier is a cryptographically random string that the client uses to identify itself when exchanging an authorization code for an access token. So it's another security level that Google puts. And as you can see, we also generate a state, and we will store that state in our cookie. And yeah, we are generating a state And this function comes from Arctic, and Arctic has also a function for generating code verifier. So let's call it code verifier. We can pass code verifier to this function. So this part of code is something that we should do in our action. That's why I will cut this part, export this Google object here, and I can now go to my actions if I can find it. Okay, it's here, dot actions. And what do we do here is actually create an authorization URL. Let's get rid of this part as well. So that's why I will say const create authorization URL and move this part into the function. I will need to, actually we don't need any parameter. We will generate a state and I will import those from Arctic, and Google comes from the folder that we have created, Lucia Auth, and we have an authorization URL, right? So I can say success through data can be authorization URL, but upon callback, we will need to check code verifier and state. You can see that we have a validate authorization code that we actually validate authorization code that we get from Google in our case, and we give a code to that function. That's how we can know that the URL has a valid information in it. We created a string code verifier and we will set a cookie like this, and it should be HTTP only. And yeah, upon callback, we will check if this code verifier is in the cookie. If not, we will throw an error. And after getting the values, we will then validate authorization code with this code verifier. So that seems right to me. Let's wrap them with a try catch. And if we get an error, we can send a message like this. Okay, go back to sign-in form. On sign-in clicked, what I will do is I will call create authorization URL. So maybe we should rename this to create Google authorization URL, as we will provide other authorizations as well. Create Google authorization URL, and I will change it as well, remove the old one. So here we have two options. If we have an error, we can show a toast as we do usually. And as if it's a success, and we can do start data. It says the URL is not assignable to the type string. We can just say to string and it will be fine. Go back to our app and I will hit this button, sign in with, and as you can see, we have redirected to our consent screen. So you can see that Google Auth tutorial, and it asks for my name, email, and profile photo. That's fine. So what will happen when I will click on continue, and I'm redirected to a route that we have defined in our Google Cloud, as you remember. So I have a state here and a code that we will verify this code with our code verifier. And for this state that Google returns, we should have stored that in the cookies as well. So as we have done it here with the code verifier, we should also store state. It's because we will check if this state value that Google returns and our state that we have stored in the cookies is matching. And with the code verifier, we will use this code verifier to verify this code is valid. But right now we don't have a page. So let's go to API, API, OAuth, Google route. Here I will create a new function, named function called get, and it will have one parameter, which is requests. Its type is next request from next server. The first thing I will do is getting parameters from the URL, and we can get it from request like this, and we will need to have state and code. I can say URL search params get code. I can call this as such because next URL provides that. And alternative will be getting URL like this, and we can wrap this with new URL, and we can do the same thing. Let's continue with that. If code or state is not exists, return the response, JSON invalid requests, and give a status for 100. If we pass this step, that means that we have a code and a state. Now we will need to get the values that we store in the cookies, which is const code verifier. And I will call cookies from next headers. I can call get code verifier and I can say value. I will do the same for state. And if one of them is not exists, we can return an error. After that, we have a code verifier and we will need to check if saved state is equal to state we have stored, and if they are not, we will return. I will let AI to do that. That's fine. And then I will call Google object that we created, and it has three functions. One of them is validate authorization code, and it expects two parameter. One of them code, other one is code verifier. So let's give it to them. A sync operation, and address has some information in it, such as access token. Access token expires at ID token and refresh token. And we will need to have access token from here. We can also store these access token or other tokens, for example, ID token or refresh token, and then create a new record in our database with this ID token. So let's grab ID token as well. And you can also save the refresh token in your database, and access token expires at, of course. Storing those will be useful if you are going to use the user's access token for retrieving more information or same information maybe in the future, but access token is only valid up to for some hours, then it gets expired. In those times you will get a 401, then you should use refresh token to get a new access token update table. But we won't need refresh token and access token in this video. After grabbing access token, I can now retrieve some information about user. And of course, we will get this information from Google. That's why we get the consent from the user. There is an endpoint that we can get the user info. It's Google's service. And yeah, the URL is simply this one. And we are passing users access token as an authorization header. Method will be get, since we are doing a get request. And we should wait for the data like this. We are getting the JSON from the promise. This data's type is this one. This a Google user in our cases in the scope that we have asked has ID, email, verified email, name, given name, picture, local. Maybe there are more fields. I'm not sure. I will give a type to this Google data. I have information related to user. What can I do with it? Since this Google data has an email in it, or maybe we can use the ID as well, we can check if there is a record that matches with that ID or email. It's your choice. If it exists, we can create a new session. So we log them in, and if there is no data in our table, we can create that data in our table, then create a new session and then log them in. This route handles both sign up and sign in. That's the great part. Some applications don't allow, once you click sign up with Google, but you have already logged in with Google before, they say you can't sign up with Google because you have already an account. I don't like this approach. So if you have an account, you should be signed in to that account, even though you click on sign up button, but it's your choice. Let's check out our schema here. So what we got here, we have a user table. We are expecting an ID, hash password, but it can be null as we will have Google sign in, and email, and is email verified. So we can create a new record in our user table. But if we plan to add more social logins, we should have a separate tables. As Lucia suggests, we can create a new table called OAuth account, and it has, as you can see, provider ID, provider user ID, And in our case, this provider ID will be Google, and provider user ID is the ID that we get from the user's information. And a user ID will be the new record that we will create here. This will be a foreign key that references the user table. And yeah, let's create a new OAuth account table, and I will let AI to do that. And as you can see, we have a user ID that references to the record in the user table. And we have provider such as Google, GitHub, provider user ID that we will put access token, refresh token, expires at, which seems fine. Now I will call drizzle kit, npx drizzle kit generate pg to generate migrations, and I will say push pg. And let's take a look at our tables. I will call drizzle kit studio, and we have a button, and the drizzle UI has changed. It looks good. So OAuth account table is here. Here we can use transaction. Transaction means that we will run multiple SQL statements, and if one of them failed, then the whole thing will roll back. Let's say we have this step operation and the first one has been successful and we had an issue with the second one. And at the step one, we have modified some things, but it didn't finalize the operation we wanted. Since it's a transaction, we roll back to the beginning, even before the first step. So yeah, the change that we made in the first step will be undo. I will call db that comes from database, and it's just that drizzle object, and it has a transaction here, and it gets a pg transaction object. And now I can type some queries here. First of all, we will check if user exists, like this const user awaits trx query user table find first, and I will give var field import equal, and here it suggests that we are comparing the email, but we will call, it's completely wrong. We can say user table.id is equals to Google data ID, like this. And if user is not exists, we can say insert user to user table, and with the values, and email will be Google data email ID. And yeah, that's all. We have created our user, and we can assign it to a variable user created user res, and we can check if created user res and row count is, can say 0. So then we should say trx and roll back. We can return false, or we can return a response like this, failed to create user, seems fine. Here we generated our user, then I would like to create OAuth table like this, trx insert, I will import this like this, and let's see, access token expires at should be actually Google. Where do we will also have this access token expires at, and ID will be Google data.id, provider is Google, provider user ID comes from Google data ID, and user ID comes from the user that we have just created, and the refresh token. We will do the same thing, but for the OAuth account res, like this. So we have created user on table. So what if there is a user, right? We will just update OAuth account table. That's all. As you can see, we are just updating the access token expires at and the refresh token. That's cool. In this transaction, we have either create a user and create OAuth table record, or update OAuth table. After this, we will need to create a session. So we can actually grab those from auth.actions, put it here, and import Lucia. And this should be user ID, and we can go and paste it here like this, user.id. and it says it may be undefined. Okay, so if user is not existed, we have create a new user here. It is created user res. So I think we can say let session null, and if it is here, session will be this, but we will use created user res. And it says it doesn't have ID. I will use returning function that the result provides. I will say ID is user table.id like this. And this is an array. So I will choose the first one. And now we are returning something here. So we can say length equals to 0. And we can move this to here. It's because if I'm in this as statement, we know that user is exist. So we are using existed user here, but in this if we are using the newly created user, if that makes sense. And after setting our session cookie, we can return next response to redirect, and it expects a URL. We can say new URL, and the root, actually it should be dashboard, and the base will be process.env, and the next public base URL like this. And we can also have a status here. 302 is a redirect status, and it's fine. So we are done with this API. It seems nice, so I will check if we have missed something. And actually we didn't use a name and picture here. So we can change our schema to have profile picture URL like this, and let's give it a name as well. I will generate a migration and push it to DB. Changes are applied. Let's have a look. User. Okay, I have added them into OAuth account table. So I think it should be in the user table actually. Let's try it again. Generate a migration. Push. So yeah, perfect. We have two columns as well, profile picture and name. And I will go to my root, and when I create a new user, and I will also add name and a picture URL as well. Like this, it's easy. And I would like to wrap this whole thing with a try catch and return a response here that returns the error message as such. That's great. So everything seems fine. Let's try it out if it will work or not. I will go to my sign in page. It says sign in with Google. Even though I don't have any account, my account will be created and I will be logged in our case. So let's click continue. Okay, it says code verifier or saved state is not exists. Let's check what did we do wrong. Go to application, and code verifier and state is there. Let's search for this error, and it's here. Okay, code verifier and state. It seems correct. Code verifier it seems to be undefined. Code, let's go to actions, and here isn't it same? That's so strange. Maybe it's because same side thing. Let's remove all of them and go back to here, use continue. And yeah, so I think it was because of this secure and same site. I will check what is wrong with them. But now we have another issue. It says error null email. Okay, I think we have email as null, which it shouldn't be the case. But as you can see, it says unhandled error. So I will go to transaction here. We are getting an error in creating user, but we don't see any JSON response. I think we should get a response, but we don't. It's because this transaction is making some async operations, right? So, and we should await for it. And since we didn't have this keyword here, the operations, even though we get some error, and API was returning a result before even getting the error here. So we were seeing error in the console, but we get this, the page is not working thing here. I can put it away, and hopefully if I go and click sign in with Google. Now it throws an error inside this function. We are not able to insert our user, and since we are waiting the promise here, and this just throw an error, and as a result of that it goes into here and we are showing the error in the page. So yeah, go back to the original issue. We are not getting an error here, but we are getting an error here, Google Data email. So let's check what do we get as a user like this. I will click sign in with Google and I can see creating user. User is actually undefined. Great. Why it is like this? That's interesting. So let me grab my access token here. And so yeah, this is my access token. I will open up Postman. I will choose raw JSON headers. I will append authorization here and peer and my access token. And the URL will be this. We will see what we get it from the Google response. So we only get an ID and a picture, but we don't see them here as well. Why is that so? Okay, that's a bit weird. Let's see. Okay, oh, it's because I print the user here. So we have actually some data here, an ID and a picture. It seems like a scope issue. We should check the scopes that we are getting. I will go to Google Cloud and go to my consent screen and I will click on edit app, save, continue. Okay, I'm back. I took a break and investigated what was the issue. So when we send a request to that user info API endpoint, so we get ID and picture. It's because we forgot to add scopes into our authorization. We can pass a third parameter here. It's an object, and you can see that it gets a scopes. And we are passing email and profile here so that we will be able to actually request those information from the Google. And I will click on sign in with Google once more. And let me refresh the page, click on it, and I will click my profile here, continue. And okay, we get the same issue. Actually, it is different than the previous issue. Okay, here we go. We have an email and picture as well. That's great. We are getting foreign key issue. Let's go to our root. We are creating a user and we are generating a session here. Then do we get an issue? Let me put some logs to check what is going on. User must be empty here. Let's check created user and the session. Okay, so go back, user undefined, creating user. Okay, and the created user is undefined. I think I know what's the case. So we are not committing these queries until we call other ones. So I think we should generate this session after we got out from this transaction. I will remove this session thing and I will also remove this here as well. Let me copy all of these. And after this transaction has been completed, and if it's not completed, it will throw an error and we will go into that block. And here I can create a session safely. And I can say Google data.id. It's because we are creating the user with this ID inside the transaction. So I don't need to be in the transaction for setting this. And after setting the cookie, I can return a new next response, redirects. A redirect function gets a URL and I can pass dashboard and my next public base URL. And as a second parameter, I can pass a status like this. So I'm here, I will click on sign in with Google and I'm redirected to dashboard. I think it means that I'm logged in, but I think we don't have dashboard. It is the root. But as you can see, I am logged in. So we have authenticated user using Lucia and Google Auth. I am signed in with Google. Another thing we can do is remove these fields from cookies. We can let it stay as well. And here I will say cookies set state and cookies set code verifier, and it should be fine. And now, as you can see, my code verifier and state has been removed, and I have a session out session, which how Lucia handles our out. You can see that I have 2 sessions, and yeah, our users information here as well. So let's go and add GitHub. But before that, let me go to here and sign in form. And what I'll do is I will copy this and go to sign up form, paste it here, then paste this one as well. We should import it. And now if someone goes to sign up page as well, they will see sign in with Google, and we can change it or sign up with Google. It's perfect. So I can also click on here and I will be able to sign in. And if I don't have any account, my account will get generated.